Okay, I've got 3 o'clock. Councilors, are you ready?
Yes.
I will call the regular scheduled council meeting for the city of Revelstoke to order, and with that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Nixon, Councilor Sparrow. Discussion, all in favor? Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 24th.
So moved.
Questions, all in favor? Passes. And the public hearing for bylaw number 2049. Mr. Nixon, in favor? Passes. And the public hearing for bylaw number 2051. Mr. Nixon, Mr. Sparrow. All in favor? Passes. Announcements, I've got several. First, you'll note that we are being recorded live by the Current, and these proceedings may well end up on YouTube. I would caution a couple of things. One, it will not be turned off during the hearing. It could be on at any time prior to council meeting. So anything you say and do here could end up on YouTube. And sometimes it's better to keep your hands on the table rather than up around your face. Having said that, I look forward to it. Thank you, David, for the transparency. The other one is I'd like to extend the sympathies of the city to Councillor Starling with the passing of his father. So our sympathies go with you. I'd also like to note that Ms. Levesque has taken a promotion into the ranks of management within the city. Will now be in charge with a bunch of corporate work and communications with the city, so congratulations to Tom. Congratulations to Cindy. The other one is a bit of a note from last night. I was down in the plaza. There was some really excellent music down there, a very good vibe. It happened to be the mayor from Golden, who has multi-talented in many ways, but an excellent performance. I was also made aware that there was a good performance up at the resort. So within a small town like Revelstoke, 2 live performances, 2 different venues, and 1 Monday evening is something to be noted. So, we had the big time, folks. Having said that, we have no delegations today, and business arising from the minutes. Anything on page 1? Page 2? 3? 4? 5? 6? 7? Correspondence. None. Old business. Item A is the Planning Advisory Commission Amendment number 2052.
I would do that, Your Worship. I would move that the Advisory Planning Commission Establishment Bylaw Amendment number 2052 be adopted.
Second, Councilor Nixon. Discussion? Question then? All in favor? Passes. We'll move on to new business.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll bring forward that staff proceed with enforcement of the sign bylaw at 1321 Victoria Road, and that staff write a memo outlining the history of the sign at this location to accompany the recommendation to council in the packages.
Is there a second for that motion? Second for discussion. For discussion, and the motion is to proceed with enforcement.
Yes, Your Worship. Just Dean Strachan noticed the sign and wrote a letter to the Ford dealership about removing it. And the Ford dealership wrote a letter back to council about the committee met and made the recommendation at the development committee level to have the staff follow the current bylaw, which was set in 2008, and it was set and vetted by the business community. The business community sits on the enhancement committee and agrees with that bylaw at that time. And if the business community wants to see something different, then they would have to bring it back to the proper channels. But at this time, the bylaw is to be upheld.
So the bylaw is as it is today, with no changes to it. Okay. I'd also note that the chamber invited us to a number of video conferences regarding signage, and a lot of that was to do with these secondary signs. Councilor Strong?
Hi, Your Worship, thank you. I'm looking at this issue and looked at it from both sides. There's actually been some errors and omissions and possibly some mistakes made from both sides. I look at this in item number 3, the city identified the sign in 2006, but no action was taken until 2011. So to me, that speaks volumes. I think the city was in error there and possibly should have acted on it sooner if they wanted it removed. I would like to suggest that the city works with this business. This business has been a long-standing business in Revelstoke for a number of years, and the sign has been there for a long time. However, the new sign is different than the old one, but it's actually just a heavier, more substantial build. But I really struggle with this. I know that we have bylaws and we need to enforce them, and I did sit in on the workshop with the chamber on signage, and I have seen examples of bad signage, and I think we do need to give that consideration. However, in this case, I think that sign was there for a long time, and I don't see enforcement at this time as being the right action. I think we need to work with this owner and perhaps come up with a sign that could fall within the bylaw and meet the criteria, and at the same time that would please both parties.
Can I question on that? Part of it's a sign bylaw, but part of it's also the building of a structure, concrete foundation and a solid permanent structure on a city right. Do you want to address that at the same time?
Well, thank you, Worship, and I do understand that, and like I say, there was some mistakes made, and possibly if the business would have approached the city and been more upfront with it, then that could have been avoided. However, having said that, I think there was a sense of they thought they were doing the right thing because they had that sign there already in that location for so many years, and there was no enforcement done, so they felt that perhaps it was okay. Confusing at best, but once again, having that sign sitting there from 2006 until 2011 with no enforcement kind of speaks volumes about where the city was standing on it, and the city should have taken action on it sooner, in my opinion.
Councilor Strong, or Mr.
Thank you, Bishop. First, I want to say that sign has been there for a long time, and actually it made improvement from the old sign to the new sign. It looked much better, more attractive, and sign bring business in the fort. And also, I like to know why it took the writing off. Is some the city approach them to take the writing off the sign? Because there's no writing in the sign anymore.
I can answer that, because I'm the owner. May I speak?
We normally don't allow,
Okay.
unless I have specific questions,
Sure.
so I may come back to you.
Okay.
if that's okay.
I just want to ask staff if they approach the owner, because last council meeting, council said to go to the committee and look back to council to make decisions. So I'd like to know if any staff approach the owner before to take the writing off the sign.
Your Worship, the issue was taken to the committee level, and that, as far as I'm aware, that's the only actions that have taken place.
So as far as we know. Is that correct?
No, no one has come to see us about removing the lettering, no. But we're waiting just for some strips to put up so we can put the lettering back. So the sign is not yet complete.
Councilor? Councilor?
I think Councillor Starling has pointed out one of the real cruxes of the matter here. But by the same token, I think if we choose to ignore our bylaws, even though we seem to in this case a bit anyway, but if we choose to ignore our bylaws, it will only continue. I think there's got to be a compromise in this. And Councillor Starling has already suggested working with the owner to perhaps a different sign, something mounted perhaps back on Jacobson property. I think there's a win-win solution here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we're reviewing the sign bylaw and we're constantly dealing with signs. This particular sign is not offensive to me, although I am an advocate of the law. And it's a bylaw. It's something that we talk about constantly. We've dealt with the Chamber of Commerce on that. As I said, it's not offensive to me. It's quite an attractive sign. And Jacobson does maintain the boulevard at their own expense. I would wish that we could withdraw this and let the sign stay as it is without enforcement, but I think regardless of who it is, if it's someone finds it offensive or it doesn't meet our bylaws, we still need to enforce it.
So I remind council that you have a number of options. The motion in front of you is to enforce the bylaw as it states. You can approve this motion, or if you defeat it, you're also welcome to bring forward another motion, or any secondary motion you want. This motion addresses the contravention of the sign bylaw. It does not address the trespass on the city property. So the sign is built on a concrete base on city property. It's no different than building a shed in the back alley behind your motel or your hotel or your house, or building your house on your neighbor's property, or driving your neighbor's truck when it's not there. So there's two issues here. One is contravention of the sign bylaw, which is designed to provide consistency with signs. The other one is the fact that there's a concrete pad and a permanent sign that's been built on city property.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. That sign been there for the last 10 years, and I think Jacobson did in good faith building that pad that looked much, much better. That's why they did it, in good faith, not because they took advantage of building city property. And that's why I'm going to vote against it, because that sign should stay.
Councilor, anything further? Councilor Winter?
Thank you, Your Worship. I am still concerned that if that goes through, if it is allowed to stay there, this council and following councils will constantly have problems with locations of signs.
The issue of precedent.
Yeah.
So what's to stop the next person from putting their sign in the middle of the sign?
And saying you let it happen before.
What's to say they can't build a road in the middle of your road? Good question. Councilors?
Just to note, Your Worship, part of the motion, the second part, is that staff write a memo outlining the history of the sign, this location, to accompany the recommendation to council.
That's in your packages, the history.
Yes.
The history is in your packages.
I just wondered if Mr. Vandermeer has seen that or had a chance.
Your Worship, I think I should just clarify a couple of points for council. One, the statement that the sign, the new structure and sign is in the same location since 2006. That's not correct. In 2006, the committee had documentation that the sign was predominantly on private property previously at that point. And the second item, not part of the debate, but I think might be an important consideration for council, is we are currently looking at other signs on Victoria that other businesses have approached the city and would be paying for those structures that are on city property.
second part of the discussion. If the sign is allowed to stay, should the sign then pay a ransom or greater than the other signs that we're renting out on city property? And how does this imply with the sign that's next door that has signage targeting the council? Does that then become allowed?
Your Honor, I believe the sign next door is on private property, is it not?
It is now. But it's got the same history, the same lineage. And if it gets moved onto the city property on a concrete base, it will be treated the same.
Yes, it is a good question.
As we go.
Question, Mr. Palmer, would you be offering Mr. Vandermeer the option to put a Jacobson Ford sign in a city-owned kiosk and pay a rent on that kiosk, which would be maintained by the city as an option for him if we were to remove that sign? Just a question.
You want to answer or? I mean, the other part of the question, if in fact you want to allow the sign to stay there, then you can come back and say, look, at a price, because there is a piece of city property that's being used without authority. There has to be some authority to allow a permanent construction of that sign with a rental attached to it.
Your Worship, I think, regardless of what decision we come to here, and I'm not hearing a clear direction from anywhere here, but I think one of the points that Mr. Vandermeer has made here is that the signage is very important to business. Having a proper sign and a sign that's visible and is really conducive to good business in that type of business. And it's very important that they have a sign. So regardless of what happens here, I think we need to work with this business to make sure that they are allowed to have some type of signage on the frontage that works for them. And there are some compelling reasons why this signage should perhaps not be there. But I agree with Councillor Scarcella. The sign that's there now is much more tasteful and fits in perfectly actually with the motif of what the dealership was built to, and it doesn't appear to be an eyesore. It's much better than the portable sign next door or other portable signs that have appeared on the horizon coming down Victoria. So that being said, once again, if this goes ahead, I think it's important that the city works with this owner to get proper signage in place.
So there's nothing that prevents council from dealing with signs on a one-by-one basis. The bylaw is there to provide some level of consistency and to provide the goals with respect to the visual appearance of all signs of your community. It's the standards and consistency piece that that bylaw provides. If we're going to deal with them one at a time, then we can revisit where council was several years ago, where we were approving every sign. We delegated the approval of the signs under the sign bylaw as a matter of efficiency. We can change that and bring them all back to council. Or we can deal with every sign on an individual basis. And that becomes quite onerous. I'm prepared to do it, but my choices of color, my choices of signs may not be as attractive and rewarding as some would think. You're quite correct, the sign is much better than it was. It's a concrete sign with a wooden base and it's on city property, and eventually they'll trim the trees up so you can see it. And fair enough, that's all true. I'm of mixed minds myself. But what really irks me is the fact that somebody would just build a sign on city property without asking.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'd just like to say I empathize with the business, their location. When you're driving east, you are going around the corner and you're looking to the left, you're not looking to the right. So having a sign with writing on the right with too many letters on it is not going to really get where. But if they could come into City Hall and work with the staff, perhaps they could have a sign across the street, which people can see going east and people can see going west. I think there can be a win-win for dealership. But building a sign without permission, without a permit on city property is not the way to go about it. And I think that we should be able to help them come up with better signage, because their location that they used to have on First Street, everybody walked by the cars, everybody got out in grounds. They're not in a location now where it's easy for people to just stop their car and browse and look at cars. So they do need to catch the traffic, and that's what they're doing with this sign. But I think the staff are well educated in that perspective, that they could help them come up with a better idea to help catch people traveling both directions. And when you have one of these changeable signs, there's too many letters on there, it doesn't catch the notice of the car dealership that they're looking for. And they can use their money for advertising the Current, advertising you, or Stoke FM. And I know that car dealerships are struggling with people shopping online, it affects them as well.
Councillor?
Just in Quebec, and they have a different issue with signs, but they actually have sign police there. But could I ask staff where we are with the reviewing of the sign bylaw? And I spoke about that several months ago about McDonald's when they opened here, and the sign that they had, which I was told was one of the lowest in North America. I think about the sign at the police station. It's probably one of the lowest mounted police signs in North America or in Canada, and to me that's wrong. They should be somewhat different, but to put our minds at rest, where are we with the sign bylaw, and where are we going? We've been dealing with this for years, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere, so I'm not part of that committee, so I'm at a loss in that one.
Mr. Mormons?
I'll take a stab at it, Your Worship. So first of all, our planner is away, and he's been tasked with the signs, and I guess the other thing I might mention at this point, just making sure that it's relevant to the debate at the table, whether this is another topic, I'm not sure. The signs will continue to be an issue in this community and in every community. It's one of the classic problems that councils need to deal with on an ongoing basis, and balancing the overall needs of businesses with the community. Our current sign bylaw is a good bylaw. And as far as the construction of it, there is attachments that were concerns of that created some ambiguity. Over the past several months, we've been working on a consistent application of bylaws and providing better communications with the community, so that there was a better process, and ensuring that there was a timely response. We had some challenges previously with some of the applications that were coming through. We've made a lot of headway in that way, and I am concerned that this could be a step backwards if the recommendation isn't upheld, because it will become very, very onerous on staff as far as moving ahead. I'll do the other thing. I'm not specifically answering, but the other thing on the Victoria signs, which we had the resolution, I think it was last council meeting or the one before. So working with some of the businesses, which are Director of Economic Development and Community Development is working with them, and we've recognized that the policy on the Victoria, there's concerns because there's different application, and this would be another one that would create more confusion. So there's likely to be a recommendation coming back from staff to revisit the policy on Victoria, and that might be the context of working with this business moving ahead.
Thanks.
Councillor Burdick? Mr. Bennett?
Your Worship, can I ask one thing further? How far is that sign from private property? How far is it? If a mount for another sign were to be put up, how far back would it have to go to get it on private property? Do we know?
Mr. Connells?
Your Worship, the whole sign is on the city right of way. I'm not sure exactly if it's a foot from the closest edge of the sign, or if it's right up against the property, but the whole sign is on the city property. So if the sign is 3 meters wide, it would need to be 3 meters back to be.
So there may be the possibility of mounting a sign on a post back on private property that would get about the same exposure as that sign?
It wouldn't meet the current sign bylaw.
It wouldn't.
It would also then cut into their parking spaces and other things. It would have a bigger impact on the business. Mrs. Garson?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. We talk about business that employ people, sign more, bring more business, more people working. And what I said before, nothing wrong with a sign. And so what we do now is that we tell business where to put the sign, what to say on the sign. That's a no-no. Business knows more than anybody else where to put the sign and what to put on the sign. And also, you tell me that the other business come to town and they have some type of sign in mind that attract their business. We say, no, you can't put your business because we don't like your sign. That just doesn't make any sense. But if there's any change on the signage, yes, I agree we should make some change. But to take sign out of an existing business and tell them that they can't have a sign, it's a no-no.
Your Honor, if we take that argument, what do we say to people who are already paying to have a sign located on city property?
So, a wide-ranging discussion. We've looked at a number of alternatives, but we're starting to vary away from the actual motion at hand, which is to deal with one specific sign and whether or not we enforce the bylaw with respect to that one sign. And the one sign was a temporary sign, it's now on a permanent base with a permanent structure and the implications around that. So the motion in front of you is to enforce the bylaw with a memo outlining the history. Are you ready for the question? I'll call the question in. All in favor? 2, 3. Opposed? So it passes. Relocation of heritage kiosks.
I would do that, Your Worship. I move that the relocation of the 2 heritage kiosks from the underpass at Victoria and Mutis be approved and direct staff to work with the Chamber of Commerce to find alternate locations.
Can I offer a friendly amendment to refer it to the enhancement committee to have input into the location?
Certainly. I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that's amending the existing motion. Discussion? All the question, all in favor? Opposed? Councilor Benners opposed, passes. Elections, dissent, voting bylaw number 2053.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the election and assent voting bylaw number 2053 receive first, second, and third readings.
Seconded? Councilor Nixon?
Sort of background on that, if I could, Your Worship. City Council appointed the Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer during the regular council meeting held March 11th, 2014. The proposed amendment to procedures and conduct of the local government election must be completed by bylaw and adopted on or before August 5th, 2014. It's a regulatory thing, Your Worship. There are no financial implications arising from this recommendation.
Ms. Rose, anything to add?
Yes, Your Worship. Just the bylaws before City Council, just consider 3 amendments. First amendment is to issue mail-in ballots and to receive those ballots, along with a deposit of a nomination fee once the papers are filed with the Chief Election Officer, and that the nomination papers and the electoral organizations papers could be displayed on the city's website rather than the public having to come into City Hall to view those documents. Thank you.
Would that include a list of all donations?
Sorry?
Would the public access include all of donations? Or would that be reported afterwards? In donations to a campaign? They're public knowledge as well, are they not?
Yes, they are. That will be afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, any questions? I'll call the question in. All in favor? Opposed? Passes.
Your worship, just back on the signage, your vote was, what the recommendation, because only 6 of us, like if you vote against it, it's a tie, it's defeated. I'd like to know if that's your...
I will tell you if I vote against something. So my vote is always in favor unless I specifically
Okay,
vote.
thank you.
And we'll record that I voted
Okay,
against.
thank you.
And we have item D, which is the Visitor Information Center.
I would do that, your worship. I move that the mayor and director of corporate administration be authorized to sign the declaration of trust and co-ownership agreement on behalf of the city of Revelstoke in the form substantially similar to the version reviewed by council. Background, your worship, this is a housekeeping issue. The city needs to enter into new agreements with the Chamber of Commerce and the Community Futures Development Corporation of Revelstoke to supersede previous partnerships agreements on the Visitor Information Center.
Mr. Palmer, anything further to add?
Just reiterate, thank you to Community Futures and the Chamber of Commerce. It's a really awesome partnership. I'd also like to acknowledge Alan Mason, which has been a big facilitator of that, and Teresa for helping getting through the agreements. So I think just ensures a long-term, ongoing good relationship with our community partners.
Answers the question? All in favor? Opposed? None. Passes. Communications. I'm going to go through these if we stop if there's anything you wish to add. First one is Tourism Infrastructure Advisory Committee minutes of March 11th. Youth Advisory Committee minutes of May the 21st and June 18th. Social Development Committee minutes of May the 28th. Development Services, June 30th. Development Permit 2014-2. RCMP Policing Report. May. Parks Recreation Council monthly reports for June. Arts Council letter of June 23rd. I suggest that be sent to the Parks and Recreation to budget. Is that a motion? That's just for vendor. The motion is to send it to Parks and Recreation for budget consideration. All in favor? Passes. And a letter from the town of Woolley regarding potential highway TCH upgrades. Questions to the press? David?
Only one, your worship, with regards to that sign issue. How many businesses currently have signs on city property that they pay rent for?
Okay.
Your worship, there's actually quite a few, because there's the ones on Victoria Avenue, and I'm not sure the entire number that are on there, but also every sandwich board that's on the city-owned sidewalks, there is a lease, a nominal lease for all those signs that are on the sandwich board signs throughout the town.
Mr. Mason, do you know how many signs?
Yeah, I think we have approximately 20 on the Victoria Road signs.
And what kind of revenues does the city realize from those signs? Well, not a large amount of money, but some kind of revenue.
It was set up to be self-funding, and that's what the city is reviewing right now. So it's intended to be neutral, revenue net neutral.
Okay. Well, why wasn't this issue simply handled that same way? It would seem to make a lot more sense than enforcing it simply for the sake of enforcing it, and then leaving a key business with a sour taste in its mouth.
Let me see if I can answer that one. The signs that are on Victoria Road abide by the sign bylaw and are done tastefully to consolidate all of those signs rather than a hodgepodge of signs all the way along there. So the signs that are there now are part of that revitalization effort that was done to comply with the bylaw and yet provide that signage. This was a case where a business built their own sign without any consideration of the bylaw, or the fact that it was on city property.
I understand that, but it's, wouldn't it have made a little more sense to simply fold them into all those other businesses that have done this? Especially considering the fact, as certain councillors raised, that this has been, it's been there for several years. It's been there for 8 years, I mean, without the city enforcing anything.
Mr.
Yeah, but the intent of the signs on Victoria Road, David, the directional signs for businesses that are off Victoria Road.
Yeah.
So businesses advertise on these signs can't have an advertising position on Victoria, they have to be on these signs. So up until now, we've never had a business on Victoria Road actually advertise on one of the Victoria Road signs because they have the option of advertising on their own property, which is what most of the businesses do along there. So I think that's the difference.
Oh, that's a good answer, thank you. What, Your Worship, what happens now with that sign? Jacobson will get an order to remove it, and is that what happens?
You could well, if we're going to enforce the bylaw, then that's what we'll do.
Could well or will? Or is it the actual consequences kind of nebulous?
Mr. Brown?
Your Worship, the enforcement order is already in place, so we would expect the business to comply. I would like to answer just a little bit further to your previous question. Any business or anyone in the community that has a particular challenge or something unique, a unique situation, we really do encourage them to talk to staff. We're in a new era of being solution-oriented, and rather than individuals going off on their own, if they work with us, we are definitely solution-oriented and looking for opportunities that are in the interest not only of those businesses, but of the business, community as a whole. So we encourage that people work with us on any kind of specific challenges that they might have.
Okay, does that extend to signs on private property that occasionally have messages that are critical of council? Well, you guys raised them, you mentioned it during the discussion.
But you have to divorce the message that's on the sign from whether or not the sign in itself is a contravention of the bylaw. And although there is one sign that continually wants to pull the council, the enforcement of that cannot be tainted by our reaction to the message that's on the sign, but rather is there a bylaw that is being contravened. And that sign in particular has contravened the bylaw for a long period of time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Your Worship. That's pretty clear.
Was there any communication with the city before they put up the sign, like on a building permit, anything like that, or do they just stick in a concrete pad and stick it up?
Your Worship, that is the part that's quite disappointing for us, is it came as a surprise and was a new structure, a structure, not just a portable sign that was done without any knowledge of the city.
And so I take it now the order's there to take the sign down, so that will be enforced. I guess we'll be sending Marty after them shortly, or?
The motion is to enforce the bylaw.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Motion to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1G of the Community Charter. Mr. Murdoch?